The stars burned quietly in the void. Silent, cold, and distant. Ships moved through the darkness, machines of war, made by hands that had never touched Earth. The Karav Dominion believed they had already won. Their High Admiral stood aboard his black, armored flagship, staring down at the blue planet on the screen, Earth, home of the species they called the Strays. To the Karav, humans were nothing. Loud, wild, short-lived, they spread across the stars. With reckless speed, but no order, no unity. The Dominion saw them as pests, a mistake. A virus that needed to be purged before it became a real threat. So they came to wipe humanity out. The attack was sudden, precise. Billions died in the first strikes. Cities melted under plasma rains. Orbital defense grids flickered and fell. Nations collapsed overnight. But humanity didn't. They burned, they screamed, and then they changed. In the frozen rubble of a fallen megacity, a soldier named Kara Jensen crawled out of a collapsed metro tunnel. Her leg was shattered. Her squad was gone. All around her, ash fell like snow. Above, the sky glowed orange from low-bit bombardments. But she was alive. And she wasn't alone. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, stared at her from behind a broken wall. Dirty, hungry, silent. He looked at her like she was a ghost. Kara called to him. He didn't answer. But when she dragged herself toward him, he didn't run. He helped her. That was how it began. Not with armies, not with governments, not with weapons, but with people helping people. Across the ruins, survivors formed pockets. They called themselves the Spark. Not soldiers, not rebels, just humans who refused to die quietly. The Karav expected surrender. What they got was resistance. Small at first. A skirmish here, a hidden sniper nest there. The Spark didn't have fleets. They had knives, stolen blasters, and fury. But what they lacked in tech, they made up for in something the Karav didn't understand. Adaptability. Humans didn't just fight, they learned. Fast. Every attack taught them something. Every battle gave them new tactics. When the Karav sent hunter drones, the Spark hacked them. When they used mind probes, the humans used feedback loops that fried alien brains. When they released gas that killed oxygen breathers, humans modified themselves. Crude biofilters made from old medical kits and printer plastic. They wouldn't stop. 3 months into the invasion, a new figure rose among the ruins. His name was Commander Reed. No last name, just Reed. A former engineer from Mars who had seen his family vaporized by a Dominion cruiser. He wasn't a general, he had no military training. But people followed him, because Reed didn't just want to fight. He wanted to win. Under Reed, the Spark began building something bigger. They called it the Core. A hidden base deep under the Pacific Trench, built from old mining rigs and sunken warships. The Karav couldn't find it. Their scans bounced back. Their spies vanished. The Core became legend, and from the Core came retaliation. Spark units began hitting harder, smarter. They started disabling Dominion cruisers and capturing Karav tech. Their weapons evolved. Their soldiers changed. Then came Project Prometheus. Nobody outside the Core knew what it was. Rumors said Reed found alien biotech. Others whispered he had injected himself with something not human. All anyone knew was that, after Prometheus, the Karav started losing. Fast. Elite Dominion strike teams went missing. Entire bases were reduced to slag. One of their dreadnoughts 2 miles long was boarded and taken over by just 20 humans. The Karav High Council panicked. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Strays were meant to die. Instead, they were evolving, they were becoming something new. In the Core, Reed stood before a wall of blinking data. Across from him stood Dr. Elira, the captured Karaf scientist who defected after watching her people execute a colony of unarmed children. Her eyes were tired, her voice was calm. "They'll come in force now," she said. "Not just strike fleets. The Grand Armada." Reed didn't flinch. "Let them." She looked at him. "You don't understand. That's 10,000 ships, planet, moon burners. I understand." He tapped the screen. "We're ready." She frowned. "No one is ready for that." Reed smiled. "Humans are." Across the galaxy, deep in Karaf space, strange signals began appearing. Not transmissions, warped light, space bending in ways it shouldn't. Patrol ships vanished in flashes of white light. Stargates turned to dust. Something was wrong. The Dominion didn't know it yet. But Earth's fall hadn't been their victory. It had been humanity's awakening. In the mountains of old Europe, spark soldiers moved like shadows. No radios, no signals, just gestures and silent coordination. Their eyes glowed faint blue in the dark. Not tech-biological, an upgrade. Gift of Prometheus. One soldier, Nadia Voss, knelt by a Dominion outpost. She held no gun. Just a spear tipped with neutron-etched glass. A weapon that made no sound when it cut through Karaf armor. She moved so fast the guards didn't see her. By the time the alarms rang, the base was burning. She vanished into the night. Across the stars, more humans joined the spark. Not just survivors, soldiers from deep space colonies, engineers from asteroid cities, biologists from Europa's oceans. They brought knowledge, they brought fury, and they brought something no one expected, hope. For the first time, other species began to notice. Races who had once ignored Earth now watched closely. Some were afraid, some were curious. One or two even offered help, quietly, carefully. The Karaf didn't like that. They increased pressure, more attacks, more death. And humans adapted again. On Mars, children born after the invasion breathed less oxygen. On Titan, young scientists built nervous systems that could connect directly to machines. On Earth, neural growth accelerants caused human minds to outpace even the Karev AI. Humans weren't just fighting back, they were becoming something more and deep. In the core, Reed stood at the edge of something terrible and beautiful. Project Prometheus was only phase 1. He looked into the chamber, where a figure floated in liquid light. Not dead, not asleep, just waiting. It looked human, but not quite. It had no name yet, and when it woke up, the war would change forever. The stars trembled when the Grand Armada arrived. 10,000 Karaf ships in perfect formation spread across Earth's solar system. Their flagship, the Judicator, sat at the center, larger than any moon, covered in cannons, shield arrays, and engines older than most civilizations. They had come to finish what they started. Inside the core, alarms stayed silent. The Spark already knew. Their sensors had picked up the fleet days ago. They had prepared. Commander Reed stood in the central control room, watching the enemy fill the sky. His face was calm, but his eyes burned. "They brought everything," whispered General Kale, a former admiral from Saturn's ring colonies. Reed didn't look away. "Good, we'll take everything." The core began to move. Deep beneath the Pacific, entire sections of ocean floor opened like a mechanical flower. Towers rose, glowing with unknown energy. Ships that looked like twisted animals and machines combined lifted from hidden bays. They weren't human ships anymore. Not really. They were part of something new, part of what humanity had become. Above, the Karaf Armada waited for surrender. Instead, They got silence. Then, a single human ship left Earth's atmosphere. Small, silver. No weapons. A message was sent. It was one sentence. "We are still here." The Curragh responded with fire. 10,000 plasma lances lit the void. The human ship vanished in light dot. Then the impossible happened. From the wreckage, sparks floated, shimmering white lights that spread across the sky like dust in wind. Where they touched Curragh ships, systems died. Engines failed. Shields collapsed. Whole cruisers drifted, powerless, as humans launched their real attack. Spark units poured from stealth carriers. Hundreds of soldiers, each genetically modified, enhanced with neural linkages and hive-sync tech. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. They tore through the Curragh like wolves through sheep. On the moon, Spark engineer Miko Tan stood beside an ancient telescope array, now rewired into a weapon. His fingers danced across holographic controls. "Targeting fusion cores," he said calmly. A technician beside him looked up. "They won't see it coming." They already didn't. The beam, fired, invisible to the naked eye, it struck 7 Curragh ships in under 3 seconds. Each one erupted in silence. Fire without sound, light without warning. The moon shuddered, and still. Humanity wasn't done. Back in the core project, Prometheus stirred Dr. Elira, then monitored the chamber closely. The being inside had no name, but it had grown fast. Too fast. Its body adapted daily. Bones reinforced themselves. Skin hardened into a near-organic armor. Its brain developed new folds and neural webs no human had ever evolved before. But it still had human eyes. When it opened them, Elira stepped back. "You're awake," she whispered. The being floated to its feet, still dripping in biolight. It looked at her. It didn't speak, but she heard its voice in her mind. "Where is Reed?" The door opened behind her. Reed walked in. "I'm here," he said simply. The being tilted its head. "I remember you. You were made to end this war," Reed said. "You don't have to fight. Just help us win." The being nodded. Then it stepped out of the chamber. Outside, the world had become fire. On Mars, Curragh ground troops fought Spark defenders in blood and dust. On Europa, underwater cities hid hybrid scouts who moved through frozen oceans like shadows. On Earth, civilians had become resistance leaders, using underground tunnels, hacked satellites, and old AI to fight a war most thought impossible. Still, the Curragh didn't retreat. Their pride wouldn't let them. Inside the Judicator, High Admiral Syrex watched the battle unfold. He slammed a clawed fist into the console. "How are they doing this?" he growled. Beside him, his second-in-command trembled. They're changing too fast. We can't predict them. Every time we adapt, they're already ahead." "They are insects." "They were," the aide said. "They aren't anymore." Syrex turned toward the screen. One feed showed a human tearing open a heavy door with bare hands. Another showed Spark soldiers walking through fire, unaffected by heat. Another still showed what looked like children lifting objects too heavy for any warrior to carry. "They're becoming monsters," Syrex said. "No," the aide whispered. "They're becoming gods." At that moment, the being from Prometheus stepped onto the battlefield. It didn't carry weapons. It didn't need to. Curragh soldiers fired. Everything they had. Nothing touched it. It moved between blasts like time bent around it. Its hands glowed with energy, raw, unstable, living. It touched the ground, and the earth trembled. Whole tanks flipped. Buildings collapsed. It looked to the sky. Then it flew. Straight toward the Judicator in the core. Reed watched the display. "Is it ready?" General Kale asked. Reed didn't answer right away. Then, it's not about readiness. It's about choice. Cale frowned. Whose choice? Reed stared at the Prometheus signal blinking toward orbit. There's, in space, the Judicator's shields raised. Cannons turned, but it didn't matter. The being arrived like lightning. Ripping through the flagship's outer armor, alarms blared. Kurov soldiers died without even seeing their attacker. Surex turned, just as the command bridge doors melted into steam. And there it stood. Tall. Human but not. Surex screamed. The being raised a hand, and the Judicator fell. A light brighter than a sun flashed in orbit. The sky lit up over Earth, and silence followed. The Grand Armada began to fracture. Without command, the Kurov ships hesitated. That was all the spark needed. Every remaining human ship attacked in unison. Not to destroy, to disable, to capture. The plan had changed. Now, humanity didn't just want to survive. They wanted answers and revenge. In the core, Reed stood beside a new console. It glowed with alien runes, Kurov language. Decoded, broken, repurposed. What now? Alira asked. Looked up. We go to them. To Kurov space. To their homeworld. She stared at him. You want to invade the Dominion? No, Reed said. I want them to see. I want every Kurov citizen to look at what they made. Alira nodded slowly. And if they resist? Reed's voice was ice. Then they can join their armada. The being from Prometheus returned to the core. It walked past soldiers, engineers, children, all stared in silence. None spoke. Reed met it in the hall. Are you ready? He asked. The being didn't smile. It didn't blink. Yes, together, turned toward the stars. The war wasn't over. But now, for the first time, humanity wasn't defending. They were coming. The Dominion was in chaos. For the first time in centuries, the Kurov High Council met in person. Deep in the heart of the Kurov homeworld, Beth, a dark planet of spires and storms, elders hissed and argued in a massive circular chamber. Admiral Surex was dead. The Grand Armada was shattered. A single human no. Something worse had torn through their strongest fleet, like it was nothing. That should have been impossible. But it happened. They were animals, spat Counselor Therix. Now they wield powers even we don't understand. They were never just animals, said Elder Circa, her voice thin and cold. We underestimated them. They cheated. Another shouted. No race evolves that fast. No species changes that completely in so little time. They didn't change in time, Circa whispered. They changed in pain. The chamber fell silent. No one dared respond. Then a screen lit up. A signal from outside Kurov space, encrypted, unsolicited from Earth. A single line of human code. We're coming. The council stared in horror. It was not a threat. It was a fact. Far away, deep in human-controlled space, the spark moved with purpose. The core now stretched across multiple hidden facilities. Linked through gravity-anchored relays and black hole signal hops the Kurov couldn't trace. Inside one of the core's war rooms, Commander Reed addressed his team. We've cracked their navigation system, he said. We know how they move between stars, and now, so can we. A 3D projection hovered in the air. Kurov space, dense, controlled, dozens of fortress walls, thousands of defense platforms. A red mark flashed on the map. Calrith, their capital, General Cale said, arms crossed, their heart. Reed replied, their trap, added Dr. Eliora. Then if we go into the fire. Reed nodded. Exactly. And they'll expect us to burn. He turned to the Prometheus being. It stood still. Like always, calm, focused, something more than human, but, nevertheless, we need you. The being tilted its head. I go where humanity goes. Kale muttered, What do we even call you? The being looked at them all. I am not a weapon. I am not a god. I am what they made. Reed smiled faintly. We'll call you Echo. Echo nodded. Then let's make them remember, he said, that invasion began in silence. There were no declarations, no parades, no diplomacy, just hundreds of modified human vessels sliding through dark space. Cloaked in fields the Curve couldn't see. They didn't come in force. They came in threads. Dozens of independent teams, each with one mission: destabilize the Dominion from the inside. On the jungle moon of Yeshdek, Spark operatives destroyed a genetics lab experimenting on prisoners. On the desert colony of Raktal, a single Spark engineer rewired a defense AI to turn on its masters. And in the deep crystal mines of Virex, human children, once taken as slaves, rose up with glowing eyes and voices that echoed with echoes. Power, the Curve started to fracture. Their soldiers began to whisper. Their citizens began to question. And in the middle of it all, one message kept appearing on walls, in systems, in dreams. You tried to end us. You only made us evolve. But the Curve didn't collapse easily. In response to the growing panic, they activated Protocol Obsidian, a last resort unit, a living weapon. It was called Severance. Once a Curve scientist, now a creature of metal, pain, and rage. It had no face, no mercy. It fed on energy and hate. And it was designed for one purpose: to erase anomalies, to erase Echo. It launched from Calrith silently, slipping into the black like a ghost. Back in Spark territory, Echo paused in mid-movement. Eyes narrowed. They've released it. Released what? Reed asked. A mirror, Echo replied. Of everything wrong in them. Reed's eyes tightened. Can you stop it? Echo's voice darkened. Only if I remember who I used to be. He left without another word. Days later, on the edge of a dying star, the two met. Echo and Severance. No ships, no armies, just two beings, suspended in space, surrounded by drifting light and silence. Severance struck first. Reality bent. A shockwave blasted through space-time, collapsing a small moon nearby. Echo flew backward, but didn't fall. He countered. With a thought. Echo fractured local gravity. A pulse of controlled chaos spun outward, bending Severance's armor. Sparks flew. The stars themselves seemed to scream. But Severance didn't stop. Neither did Echo. It wasn't just a battle, it was two ideas crashing into each other. One was order without mercy. The other was chaos that learned. Echo bled, he burned, he broke. But he adapted. Every hit taught him more. Every strike made him faster. He remembered pain and turned it into strength. Finally, as Severance prepared a final charge, its core glowing with enough energy to crack a planet, Echo stepped forward. No, he said. He opened his arms and took the blast. Light swallowed everything. When it faded, Severance was gone. Echo floated in the wreckage, barely conscious, but alive. A whisper echoed across space. We evolve through fire. The Curve felt it. Every ship, every planet, every soul and fear bloomed. Back in Calrith, Councillor Therix slammed his hand into the table. We cannot stop them. They're inside our systems, inside our minds. Another councillor collapsed, shaking. They rewrote my dreams. I saw Earth. I saw ... peace. And I wept. Circa leaned forward. They have something we never had. What? Forgiveness? No, Therix spat. They have vengeance. And it's coming. The skies above Calrith turned dark. A fleet appeared. Small, silent, human, at its head. Commander Reed. At its heart, Echo reborn, healed, and glowing with quiet power. Reed sent a message. No threats, no demands, just 5 words. You have one last chance. And Calrith trembled. The message echoed through every system on Calrith. 5 words. Plain and soft, but they shook the core of homeworld like a quake under the skin. You have one last chance. All across the planet, panic grew. Civilians flooded underground. Shelters, council guards, activated weapon systems, older than history. The sky was full of defense drones, spinning and scanning, waiting for the first sign of an attack. But none came. Not yet. Inside the Spark command vessel, Astria Reed watched the data feeds calmly. Dozens of Kurov communications were being intercepted. Chaotic, scared, angry. They expected blood, said General Kale. We gave them time. They don't understand time, Reed replied. Only fear. Echo stood behind him, silent as ever, eyes closed. Though he looked human, no one mistook him for one anymore. His mind stretched across signals, energy fields, even emotion. He could feel Calrith trembling like a living thing. They're trying to stall, Alira said, tapping through data, redirecting city power to planetary shields, moving council members to hidden chambers. They still think we want their heads, Kale said. Reed nodded. They haven't learned the lesson yet. Kale stepped forward. And if they never do, Reed didn't blink. Then we show them. He turned to Echo. Are you ready? Echo opened his eyes. I am what you made me. A single human ship dropped toward the planet. No weapons, no escort. Just Echo. The Kurov fired on it, instantly automated response. Lasers, plasma bolts, railgun slugs. But everything missed, not because of speed, because reality bent around him. Echo walked calmly through the air, descending like a falling leaf. He stepped onto the hard black stone of Calrith's capital with bare feet. The world went quiet. Crowds stared from rooftops and windows. No one moved. And Echo began to speak. Not aloud, but through every mind. You tried to erase us. Every Kurov heard him, children, warriors, counselors. But we survived. You burned our skies, shattered our cities. You tore our lives apart, and still, we lived. On a high balcony, Councillor Therix stared in frozen fury. Shut it off, he screamed. Silence it. But they couldn't. The message wasn't through tech. It was through thought. Through pain. You made us monsters to survive you. We became what we needed to be. Not because we wanted to, but because we had no other choice. In the Spark command ship, Alira's hands shook. She had heard many things in her life, but this voice, this calm, deep grief cut through everything. Echo walked forward, still glowing. Kurov guards blocked his path. He stopped, looked at them. They dropped their weapons. Some dropped to their knees. Dotto stepped past them, in the council chamber. Panic turned to terror. He's coming here, a councillor shrieked. He'll kill us. Circa didn't move. She watched the feed. No, he could have done that already. The great doors to the chamber opened. Echo stood at the threshold. He looked around the circle of Kurav leaders. No one spoke. Not even Therix. I offer you something rare, Echo said aloud for the first time. Mercy. Therix stood, shaking with hate. We would never. Echo raised a hand. Therix's mouth stopped moving. You don't speak for your people anymore. Therix collapsed. Not dead, but quiet. His voice erased. Echo turned to the others. You sent war. We answered with evolution. You sent death. We answered with life. You sent control. We answered with freedom. Circa stood slowly. And now you choose. She stared into his eyes. You could destroy us. Yes, why don't you? Because destruction is what you would do. Circus' lips trembled. Then what are you? Echo paused. I'm what's left when you push humanity too far. And then he left. No guards stopped him, no weapons fired. He rose into the sky once more, returned to Astria, and said nothing. Back on Calrith, the silence he left behind changed something. Not all Karov believed, but some did. For the first time, in their proud, cold history, they doubted. In the following days, cracks split the Dominion. Some planets stopped obeying. Some soldiers surrendered to spark cells. Some citizens began sending messages to Earth, not threats, not hate. Questions. One message read simply, teach us. Reed stood beside a large observation window, watching Calrith spin below. General Cale joined him. So, that's it? Cale asked. We let them live. No, Reed replied, we let them learn. Elira stepped in, holding a datapad. They've agreed to negotiations. Full access, reparations. They're asking if we'll send Echo back to speak again. Reed shook his head. No, Echo is not a symbol for them. He's a reminder for us. Echo stood nearby, silent, watching the stars. They haven't earned him yet. Elira looked at Echo. What about you? What do you want now? For the first time, Echo hesitated. Then he whispered, to find the part of me that was lost. Reed nodded. Then we'll help you, together. And outside, the stars didn't seem so cold anymore. Not because the war was over, but because, for the first time in a long, long while, there was peace. Peace didn't come easy. Even after the fall of the Grand Armada, even after Echo stood in the heart of Calrith and silenced their council. The galaxy didn't simply heal. Some Karov still held power. Some worlds refused to accept change. Not all of them feared Echo. Not all of them believed in mercy. And not all humans forgave. In the outer colonies, survivors still dug their families from ash. On ruined Earth, bones still littered the streets of what used to be great cities. The spark had won, but many now asked, what was the price? Inside the core, Reed walked through a massive underground chamber, filled with rebuilt Earth technology, and captured Karov engines. Engineers worked non-stop, fusing alien designs with human chaos. A project was underway. A ship, unlike anything either race had ever made. Project Lazarus. It wasn't a warship, it was a message. The ship would carry a crew of humans and Karov together. It would travel far beyond known space, seeking out others. Not to conquer, not to fight, to warn them. To show them what happened when power met arrogance and underestimated the one thing no empire could kill. The human spirit. Echo stood nearby. Watching the skeleton of the ship take shape, he tilted his head slightly, as if listening to voices no one else could hear. They're still coming, he said. Reed stepped beside him. Who? Remnants, warlords, others the Dominion kept in shadow. Now that the Empire is falling, they see their chance. Cale stormed into the room. He's right. We've picked up strange activity on the edge of Karaf space. Ships with no flags. Tech that doesn't match anything we've seen. Reed frowned. Pirates? Cale shook his head. Something worse. He threw a projection onto the wall. It showed an orbital station drifting near a dead planet. Half of it was torn open. Bodies floated, frozen. Not Karav, not human. Something else. They were wiped out in seconds, Cale said. Whoever did it left no data, no energy signature. Eli joined them, grim. It's not war. It's cleansing. Echo's voice was soft. They were watching, waiting, and now they think the galaxy is weak. Reed turned to the engineers. Stop the Lazarus project. Shift priority. To what? Asked one of The text read, "Didn't blink. Defense." A week later, a Spark scout ship arrived at the edge of the Revik cluster. No response from the colony, no beacons, just silence. The ship descended. The colony was gone, not destroyed, erased. No buildings, no people, no ash dot, just glass. A message was burned into the earth. You are not alone, and you are not welcome back in the core. Chaos erupted. They're not just scavengers, Elira said. They're hunters. Organized, strategic. They waited until the Dominion fell. And now they're moving. Kale stared at the message. They're warning us. Like we're them. Like we're the next target. Reed looked at Echo. Can you sense them? Echo closed his eyes. I can feel something. Old, cold. It's not fear. It's calculation. Reed turned back to the team. This isn't over. We stopped the Curve, but now we've lit a fire that's drawing darker things. What do we call them? Kale asked. Echo answered first. The Forgotten. Elira shivered. That's not a name. That's a threat. Reed didn't argue. Instead, he gave the order. Reactivate all Spark units. Call in every survivor. Every outpost, every ally. If the Forgotten are coming, he looked up at the stars. They're going to learn the same lesson the Karaf did. Across the galaxy, the Spark rose again. Not just as survivors, but as guardians. Ships took to the stars, not in war, but in warning. Humans and Karaf worked side by side, building together, preparing. Old enemies, new allies, the strange and beautiful result of pain shared and survived. But in the dark, the Forgotten moved. They spoke no words. They sent no messages, they simply erased. One by one, colonies went silent, then planets, then systems. But this time, humanity was watching, and they were ready. Echo stood alone on a cliff near the core. Wind rushed past him, though no one else could feel it. He looked toward the stars with something almost like sadness. Elira joined him. You think we can stop them? Echo didn't answer for a moment. Then, we couldn't stop what the Karaf did. We survived it. We became something more. And them, he turned. If they come to end us, they'll find out, again, that humans don't break. He looked down at his own hands. We evolve. The stars no longer felt safe. Across the galactic rim, whole systems had gone quiet. The Forgotten left no survivors. No warnings, just emptiness where life once was. The Spark had learned to expect destruction, but this was different. This was silence with intent. Inside the core, Commander Reed stood before a massive map lit with red. Each dot used to be a home. Now it was nothing. General Kale entered, his face like stone. They hit 3 more outposts. The resin line is breaking. We've lost contact with Venari Station. That's 30,000 people, Reed said quietly. They're gone, Kale replied. Reed nodded. What did we learn? Kale hesitated. They don't attack randomly. They're choosing targets, places that united under our banner. So they're not just invading, Reed said. They're hunting what we represent. Elira joined them, her tone urgent. And they're not doing it alone. She projected data. Shaky images from a deep space probe. Dark shapes gliding through a nebula, ships, maybe, but wrong in shape, twisted, silent. Some too large to be real. Kale stepped forward. What are they? Not machines, Elira said. Not fully organic. Some kind of hybrid. And they don't radiate heat or light. They don't even bend gravity the way they should. They shouldn't exist, Reed muttered. But they do, Echo said, walking into the room. Everyone turned. He looked different. Paler, quieter, more distant. What do you feel? Reed asked him. Echo closed his eyes. A cold logic. Not anger, not hate. They erase life because they believe life is the flaw. Kale looked shocked. They believe life is wrong. They think we're infection, Echo said. The Karaf tried to control life. The Forgotten seek to cleanse it. Elira stepped back. That's not war. That's extermination. Reed straightened. Then we show them that humans don't go quietly. He activated a hidden console. Behind the wall, a chamber opened. Inside, the Lazarus. The ship was finished. Sleek, silver-black, covered in armor made from scavenged Kurav and spark alloys. Powered by a core linked directly to Echo's neural energy. It was meant to explore, Reed said. Now, it's our spearhead. Where's it going? Kale asked. Into the dark. We need answers. We need to know what the Forgotten are, where they come from, and how to stop them. Elira frowned. And who's going to fly it? Reed looked at Echo. I will, Echo said simply. Alone, he entered the ship. It accepted him, folding its systems around his presence like it had been waiting. As the Lazarus rose from the core's deepest chamber and ascended through the atmosphere, humanity held its breath. The journey into the dark took weeks. No signals, no stars, just a growing pressure in the void. Inside the Lazarus, Echo sat at the heart of the ship, connected through mind and nerve. Then he saw it, a massive object. Neither ship nor station, more like a structure half living, in dead space. No light, no sound, just presence. The Forgotten stronghold. Echo didn't hesitate. He entered. Inside was silence, not death, awaiting. The ship stopped on its own, lights dimmed, and Echo heard a voice not in his ears, but deep in the bones of his soul. You are the apex of error. Echo stood. I am what your kind feared. You were made from pain, shaped by ruin. You spread. Yes, Echo said. That's called surviving. That's called contamination. And then they came. Dozens of them. Twisted forms. Limbs that weren't right. Faces that weren't faces. Echo stood still as they approached. They didn't attack. They studied him, tried to read him, and failed. One creature stepped closer, taller than the others. Its body shimmered like glass soaked in darkness. It spoke without sound. You are not machine, not flesh. You are a contradiction. No, Echo whispered. I'm a response. And then he struck. The Lazarus lit up. Energy burst from every panel. The ship and Echo moved as one, a storm inside a nightmare. He didn't fight like a man, or even a weapon. He fought like an answer, and for the first time, the Forgotten staggered. Some tried to flee. Dotto reached deeper into the ship's systems, Sinto himself, and activated a pulse. Not to kill. To send a message. Back, across the stars. Earth. To Reed. Inside the core, alarms flared. Reed looked up from the console. We have signal. Kale leaned in. From who? Reed didn't blink. Echo. A pulse came through the galaxy like a heartbeat. Every spark, sensor, every receiver, every human-made outpost caught it. It said one word: fight. And they did. The spark, once scattered, now rallied. Hidden Kurav worlds activated defenses to protect their former enemies. Old foes became new brothers. Echo had found the source of the threat, and now the galaxy had a target. For the first time, the Forgotten were no longer shadows. They were known, and they would be fought. Reed looked to the stars and whispered to himself, You tried to wipe us out. You only made us evolve. And now, they would evolve again. The Lazarus hung in space, battered and burning. Inside, Echo stood in silence, his body torn, his energy fading. Around him, The forgotten hive world trembled. His pulse message had gone through. He had struck their heart. But he was alone now. And the forgotten were still coming. Across the void, they swarmed waves of shadow and metal. Logic without mercy, their cold minds focused on erasing him completely. But Echo smiled, because humanity was coming to dot back in the core. Reed watched the stars fill with light. Not from destruction, but from ships, spark fleets, former Karav war cruisers, civilian crafts turned battle-ready, even rogue AI vessels once hostile to both sides, all united now. "We've never had an army like this," Elira said, stunned. "We've never needed one," Kale added. Reed turned to them both. "This isn't about vengeance. It's about survival, about proof." "Proof?" Elira asked. "That you can't erase life just because it fights back." He turned toward the command deck. "Send the order. Full jump." The largest Alliance fleet in galactic history jumped into the abyss. That they arrived in minutes. And they didn't hesitate. Thousands of ships poured out of folded space like lightning from a storm cloud. The forgotten, once faceless and overwhelming, now had something they'd never encountered: opposition. Real, determined, evolved resistance. In the center of the chaos, the Lazarus still stood, cracked, dimming, but holding. Reed's voice came over the comms. "Echo, we're here." On the bridge, Echo knelt, surrounded by flickering lights. Blood or something like it dripped from his fingers. "I held them off," he said, voice weak but steady. "But they're changing, adapting, like I did. They'll survive this. Unless we finish it." "We will," Reed promised. "You just hold on." But Echo was already standing. "No, you don't understand." He stepped into the Lazarus's core chamber. "I was made from your pain, your rage, your love. I carry all of it. I'm not just human anymore. I'm what humanity became when it refused to die." Elira's voice came through, shaking. "Echo, what are you doing?" He placed a hand on the core. "It's not enough to fight." He looked toward the growing swarm. "We have to remind them." And he activated the Lazarus's final protocol. It wasn't a weapon. It was memory. Across the battlefield, the forgotten faltered, because suddenly they felt pain. Joy. Loss. Hope. Millions of memories echoes, and the sparks flooded their minds. The moment Earth fell. The moment a child helped a wounded soldier. The birth of the spark. The first handshake between human and Kurif. The forgotten shrieked not in pain, but confusion. Emotion was a virus, and Echo gave it to them all. One by one, the monstrous ships broke formation. Some stopped moving. Others began turning away. Retreating. Recalculating. Echo fell to his knees, his body flickering with unstable energy. "They're leaving," Kale whispered from the command ship. "They're changing," Elira said. Reed stared at the feed from Lazarus. "What did he do?" "Something we couldn't," she replied. "He made them understand." Silence fell over the battlefield. The forgotten were gone. Not all, but enough. Reed ordered no pursuit, that this wasn't conquest, this was survival. Victory. He opened a channel to the entire Allied fleet. "Today," he said, "we did not just win a war, we stopped an extinction. We came together, human, Karav, machine, hybrid, all of us." He looked at the image of Echo, still kneeling in the Lazarus's flickering core. "We owe it to him, and to those we lost. Because no matter how hard the universe tries," he paused, "you cannot kill what refuses to die." The fleet erupted, in silent cheers, signals, pulses, beacons of light hope, spreading like wildfire through the void. Later, they brought the Lazarus home. Echo's body was found at the heart of the core, still, peaceful, not dead, not alive, something in between. Some say he still exists in the systems, in the stars, in the dreams of those who survived. He became a myth, a warning, a promise, because the galaxy now knew. You could scorch Earth, you could destroy cities, you could erase history, but if you tried to wipe out humanity, you only made it evolve.